Martika. I'm going to read a story to Martika this afternoon called Parka Mary. It was written by Peter Ivinson and illustrated by Rianne Brynjolfsson. And in this story, this old lady teaches Mr. how to trap rabbits, how to skin them, how to get the fur off and line his moccasins to make his own moccasins. Would you like to feel this, Martika? It's soft, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And these are a pair of Martika's moccasins. And this is rabbit fur. This is what Peter learned to do from Mary. He learned to do this sewing, put the fur on, so they'd be nice and warm. Choke cherry jelly and rabbit fur remind me of Christmas and read Parka Mary. It wasn't that I was scared of her. She didn't hide behind the trees wanting to pop out and scare me, and nor did she ever try to chase after me. But there was something about her that scared me. It might have been the way Mary dressed. It didn't matter whether it was 40 below or 40 above. Martika, 40 below is the coldest day in the winter when it's really, really, really cold and you can't even go outside. And 40 above is when it's really, really hot outside and you want to swim all day. But she dressed the same. It didn't matter what the temperature was.
How much did we sell?
She always wore big floppy moccasins lined with rabbit fur, thick gray wool socks, 3 or 4 sweaters heavily darned at the elbow, and a Montreal Canadian hockey tube pulled down over her gray straggly hair. She was missing 4 or 5 front teeth, and her skin was brown and wrinkled. Yet that wasn't what scared me. You see her kindling pile here, Martika? There's a little axe and a little pile of wood. I think it was because even though I was only 7, someone, somehow, sometime had told me that because of her brown eyes, I should be frightened. I couldn't help it. Every time I passed by her house, I would stare at her, and sometimes she would wave. But every time that happened, I would get embarrassed and I'd turn my head and back to the road and rush off for home. I must have done that for what seemed like years, until the time I heard her call. It made me stop immediately. No one had ever called me Mister before. "Hey, Mister," she repeated. "Take these to your mom," she said as she held out a pail full of choke cherries. "I've got all I need." It's a big pail of berries, isn't it? Mm-hmm. She's giving it away to him. Martika, do you know the word for dog in Ojibwe?
On a horse.
Pardon?
On a horse.
I stood there in the middle of the road with my mouth hanging open. Not moving, not knowing what to do. Mary eventually carried the pail halfway and she plunked it down on the edge of the road and she shuffled back to her front door. I didn't know what to do. Should I take them? Should I leave them? Finally, I decided that maybe Mom would know what to do. With them. And she did. And with that pail of choke cherries turned into jelly and ended up on our breakfast table, I decided that maybe Mary wasn't so scary after all. Mom agreed. "That Mary," she chuckled to herself. "I should have given her the whole bag of sugar instead of just a cup."
Lending her a cup?
She lent her 1 cup. The next morning, I took Mary her pail filled with a bag of sugar, and she smiled a toothless grin, and she patted me on the head. And for the first time on the way home in school that afternoon, I stopped when she waved at me from her front step. "Hi, Mary," I said. "Hey, mister, come here for a minute." And she held out a piece of warm, freshly baked bread, sprinkled generously with white sugar. You know what the word generously means?
Lots and lots and lots.
That's right, lots and lots of sugar on his toast. We sat and talked on the top step, or at least she talked. I mostly listened. I found out the reason why Mary wore those moccasins. Her bunions were so bad she couldn't wear shoes. Bunions are when you have a bone growing out of your foot right here, and you can't put your foot into a shoe. So Mary had a bunion, and she wore 4 sweaters because that was all she owned. Only in the summertime did her 4 sweaters make her feel comfortable. In winter, unless she was baking bread, she was always cold. I learned many things from Mary that year on my way home from school. Look, there's her wood stove, Martika.
And there's the dog sleeping.
Maybe this is a beaver skin hanging there by the door. She taught me how to snare a rabbit, how to skin it, how to thread a needle, how to make leather soft and supple, and finally how to line my own moccasins with rabbit fur. It was getting close to Christmas when I decided I was going to do something special for Mary. Downtown I saw the perfect parka in Henderson's storefront window. It was bright red with a fur-lined hood, and although it was probably 3 sizes too big, I figured she'd wear it right over top of her 4 sweaters. It was very expensive, and my robbed piggy bank would never have had enough pennies if my parents hadn't helped me buy my special present for Mary. Early on Christmas Eve, do you think Mary's going to like that parka? Yep. Early on Christmas Eve, I hurried over to Mary's shack, carrying my big bundle wrapped up in brown paper and tied with a red ribbon. Mary! Merry Christmas! I shouted outside of the shack. What's this, mister? She exclaimed when she opened the door. I held out the package and she shyly took it from me. Come in, she whispered, come in. Look, she has glasses too. Here's his dog. His dog is in every picture. On a mush. Right, there he is, right peeking in the window. Right in front of her wood stove, she ripped off the paper and pulled out the bright red parka. And quickly she pulled it on over her sweaters. And for a moment, we stood awkwardly staring at each other. Suddenly, I was embarrassed because I hadn't thought that maybe Mary would feel like she'd have to give a gift for me because I brought her a gift. Yet I knew she'd have nothing to give. Mom says for me to ask you to come for Christmas dinner, I stammered, at 4 o'clock. She laid the parka down over her wooden kitchen chair and she took a piece of rabbit fur from her pocket and she began to stroke it gently. And I knew she thought of something special when her brown eyes started to twinkle. Hey, mister, she exclaimed, tomorrow I'm going to give you the biggest gift in the whole wide world. Do you know what it is? No, I stammered. Guess, she exclaimed. What's the biggest and best present in the whole wide world? A castle? I asked. No, not now, Mary interrupted. Tomorrow for Christmas dinner. I'll bring it, but you'll have to guess.
I know what I'm going to get for Christmas.
What?
A giant castle to play in.
Whoa, that would be wonderful.
With a slide.
With a slide in it?
Yeah.
Well, that's what he's...
Water slide.
That is a special castle that has a water slide. Look, he's laying there in bed thinking, too, it's Christmas Eve. He's wondering what Mary's given him. And that night, instead of wondering when Santa was going to come, I wondered about Mary's special present. What was the biggest and best thing in the whole wide world? At 4 o'clock, even before Mary could knock on our door, I threw it open and I yelled, It's as big as Buckingham Palace. Far bigger than Buckingham Palace. Mary chuckled as she stepped inside and took off her new parka. And far more valuable, but it doesn't take up any space at all. Gold! Is it gold from Fort Knox? More more valuable than gold, and besides, your gold is too heavy to carry. This you can take with you wherever you go. Jewels, it must be jewels, exclaimed. No, it isn't jewels. Robbers like to steal jewels, and this nobody can take from you. Still thinking. He has all those jewels on. Mary has...
The dog has jewels.
The dog has jewels. Mary has her jewels on her neck. She poked her hand into her pocket of her tattered old sweater, and she pulled out the smallest box I'd ever seen. Open it, Parka Mary demanded. And for a moment I held it, wondering how this could be the biggest and best present ever. It wasn't big and it wasn't heavy. And when I took off the lid and looked inside the box, the contents didn't look very valuable either. I found a single small red heart-shaped bead laying on a bed of white rabbit fur. That little heart, mister, she said softly, stands for love. I can always give you love. I took her love that day as she folded her grandmother arms around me and squeezed me tight. What's the Ojibwe word for grandmother?
Kukum.
Pardon?
Kukum.
Kukum. And it was then that I knew that I loved the way she dressed. Her straggly gray hair. I loved her missing teeth and her brown wrinkled skin. And I especially loved her eyes. Yet, I can't help but wonder, why did someone, somehow, sometime, tell me to be frightened of those twinkling brown eyes? And here's a picture of Mary with her new parka and her Montreal Canadian toque. So what did Mary give to Peter for Christmas?
Mister?
Yeah, what did Mary give to Mister for Christmas?
Jewels.
No, she didn't give him jewels.
A crown and a necklace.
No, that's what he thought maybe she was going to give him.
A crown. A king crown.
What was in the little box?
A heart.
A heart. And what did that heart stand for?
Love.
Love. Mary gave Mister, her love for Christmas. Did you enjoy this book? Great Parka Mary. Thank you, Martika.
I want to see it.